All right, Wes Durham in 3, 2, 1. Keeping this week's pregame show rolling with Wes Durham, ACC Network broadcaster, also the voice of the Atlanta Falcons and former play-by-play voice of Vanderbilt football from 1992 to 1995, believe it or not. Wes, how you doing? Thanks for taking the time.
Billy, I'm great. It's nice to be with you. It's been kind of like a time machine week for me. I'm going to be honest. I didn't think 30 years ago was that far, and it is. And it's been fun to kind of remember those days in my career and realize now that 30 years later, I may be in the last turns or two of my career. But it's great to be able to have this game Saturday night on ACC Network, and we're excited about the game, period. And the fact that I was at Vanderbilt, my producer has laughed at the picture I put on social media this week of 26-year-old Wes Durham.
I love the end zones. Those end zones.
Yeah.
I mean,
those end zones
the
were
old,
enormous. Enormous.
Yeah, and the new/old Vanderbilt Stadium, like that looked like a newer version of what is now torn down.
Well, it's funny. I was there with Georgia Tech in an overtime game. Bobby Johnson coaching. Bobby Johnson's first game was Chan Gailey's first game at Georgia Tech, and that was in 2002. And then we went back up there. I want to say it was 5. Maybe 5. We played up there on a Saturday night. I want to say it was Halloween. We played up there like 5 or 6. I can't remember exactly the year. And we won the game. Georgia Tech won the game in overtime on an interception by James Butler. Reggie Ball had scored on a bootleg play, the first play of overtime, and then James Butler intercepted, I want to say Jay Cutler. If that's right. And it was the 2-play overtime. Georgia Tech scored on the first play. Butler's interception came on the first play. So it was a 2-play overtime. And Georgia Tech won the game, and I drove back home that night because I had Falcons next day. So anyway, long story short, this is the first time I've done anything with Vanderbilt since then, and that's been 19 years-ish, I guess. So it's cool to be able to renew those ties and kind of connect people to a guy that did the radio 1,000 years ago. So.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for the game. Obviously, both fan bases are. Everybody's fired up about it. What stands out to you most in this matchup? The storylines. When this was scheduled, I don't know that that both conferences or both teams, anticipated this much excitement for a game like this. But Vandy's obviously trying to make it back-to-back wins over Virginia Tech. You've got two really solid quarterbacks and exciting playmakers. Lane Stadium at night. I mean, this should be fun, Wes.
Yeah, Lane Stadium's amazing. The Inner Sandman thing, people who think it's kind of, pardon the pun, hokey, get ready. It's something. I mean, I'm telling you, it's amazing. And at night, it's great. So if you even thought, well, this might be cool to see, it's live and in person. It's unbelievable. And I hope we can do it justice on television. And we always find ways to do it on TV and lay out and let everybody see the whole pageantry of it because it's that good. The game itself is fascinating, Billy, from this aspect of Virginia Tech needs a win. And there's a lot of reasons they need the win. I thought they played well against South Carolina. They gave up the explosives in the fourth quarter, the punt return, the long throw to Nick Harbor that really is the separator in the game. But I thought they ran the ball well. I'm really interested to see Marcellus Hawkins, maybe a little bit more of a feature back for them than I think was expected. They were thinking the Bowling Green transfer, Terrion Stewart, might be the lead guy. And Hawkins, I think, has come in and really taken lead on that run game. So we'll see combination backs for the Hokies. For Vanderbilt, look, Pavia is a gunslinger. I love the mentality. I love the fact that he's playing in Nashville on that stage and what it means to the Commodore fans. But I'm really fascinated by Stowers in particular because I think he's an amazing player, going to be a big-time player in the next level. And then I think Cedric Alexander is kind of the secret sauce to what they have. They got the ball in the hands of a lot of guys, and you should against Charleston Southern. Find out where you are. But I think when push comes to shove, they're really leaning on Alexander. Defensively, that's where I'm curious about the game. South Carolina is going to be really good on that side of the ball, and Virginia Tech had some success. Can Vanderbilt's defense kind of get a beat on what Virginia Tech's going to do? Likewise, can Virginia Tech, who played well, as I said a moment ago, against South Carolina, can Virginia Tech's defense kind of keep the Commodore game in front of them? Vanderbilt tends to get a ton of stuff on the perimeter. How does that work against Virginia Tech? and a defense that, quite frankly, played better than I thought they would the other day. And it's a bit of a short week. I know it's a day, but it's still a short week early in the season. How does that work? Injury perspective, depth chart, things like that. When you play a heavyweight game at the front end, sometimes you don't get to know your depth like maybe, Coach Lee and Vanderbilt were able to do the other day. So I think Virginia Tech will have a little bit of an unknown there. I think it's a really good game, and we're excited to have it because I think it's got a chance to go to the wire on Saturday for sure.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into Virginia Tech. Obviously, last season was a disappointment for them. It started in Nashville with that overtime loss. How do you look at this Virginia Tech team compared to what you saw from the Hokies last year?
Well, I think last year's game kind of was a forebearer of what maybe the season was going to be, Billy, and that's the tricky part, to be honest. For me, I look at where Virginia Tech is as saying, okay, if they're going to have the kind of season they think they can have, they need to win Saturday. And that's a hard part for Hokie fans. They're processing games in 60-minute intervals and not months or seasons or whatever. But I do believe that, Brent Pry, there's a lot of speculation about him. There's a lot of speculation about the athletic director at times. There's a lot of consequential evidence on the table potentially for this game. But I think they are a talented team. That, as I said earlier, the defense was taken apart in many ways by the transfer portal. I mean, they got a safety starting at Notre Dame. They got defensive players at LSU. They got guys everywhere. So that's why I was encouraged by what they did Sunday against South Carolina. But I think Drones and Pavia become center stage guys here Saturday. And Kyron is, when given the time, I think is talented. Now, he missed some throws Sunday against South Carolina. But I thought Donovan Green and Aiden Green gave him terrific targets on the perimeter. And that combined with the run game we spoke of a moment ago is encouraging enough for me to think that Virginia Tech can get this thing on the track.
Yeah, those receivers, Donovan Green, Aiden Green, you mentioned that. I mean, there's a lot of contested catches that they were able to make against South Carolina. And to me, Wes, that's a matchup to watch Vanderbilt's defensive backs because they have some changes there too, some new faces. And we're going to dive into this throughout this pregame show. But that to me, you look at that, and we like to talk about offensive line, defensive line, which that's a typical matchup that wins games. But to me, that one right there, can Drones, if he can make those same throws and maybe turn some of those into touchdowns, I think that's a little bit of danger zone for the Commodores.
Well, and that's the part too about playing there at Lane Stadium. They roll early. I mean, they have been known to try and build momentum early with shots downfield and things like that. I don't know what Saturday night holds. I mean, we're game two still. We're dealing in college football, as you well know, with new teams virtually every year in many respects. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting at home for the first time since they beat Virginia in the Commonwealth Cup game last year to end the regular season. And look, a lot of the landscape around the program's changed. There's a lot of look and wait and see kind of what this is going to be. I don't think the game's a sellout, by the way, which is unique there. So, we'll keep an eye on kind of the temperature around the game, but the game itself for Vanderbilt, I know where it is because you're playing South Carolina next week, right? Virginia Tech goes 0-2 here, Billy. They've got, I think, Old Dominion, Wofford, and then they get into ACC play. This looms as a pretty big game for Virginia Tech, just as it does for Vanderbilt, because you want to be 2-0 playing South Carolina. If you're Clark Lee and his staff, they want to get this thing on the ascent before they get into conference play. I mean, I was there 30 years ago. That part hadn't changed. You want to win your non-conference games because of who you play in the SEC, right? So that's something I think we all have to watch on Saturday is the consequences for both teams, not just how this game goes, but what it means to the rest of the season.
Well, you kind of touched on it there, Vanderbilt having a chip on their shoulder. That's what they had last season, really the entirety of the year. Yeah. Clark has talked about that. He doesn't want to lose that. And Vanderbilt, I don't know that they ever will. And that's probably something that helps them. And you talked about that 30 years ago, something that hasn't changed. Clark Lee and this team has embraced that. They've got chip on the shoulder players. Diego Pavia is who he is. I mean, what has impressed you most, with you being there from in the early 90s to seeing what Clark has in the stadium, what that looks like now? What has impressed you most with what he's been able to do?
Well, the fact that they're in the game, clearly. is what impresses you. And when I say in the game, college athletics from my chair right now, Billy, means if you're going to be good in college athletics, you got to get in the game financially. You got to get in the game with your physical plan. Look, I remember when I was there, Roy Mubram was the baseball coach, and he used to play this golf tournament out at, I think, Temple Hills in Bellevue or wherever it was. And they would play marathon golf to raise money for one day, hoping to have lights at the baseball stadium, right? And God bless him. I mean, Joe Fisher and I can remember we had great conversations about Roy Mubram years later. And I was doing Georgia Tech baseball as part of my deal when I was there for my 18 years. I did baseball on and off during that career. A lot of it was TV, but most of it was radio. And I remember shaking Tim Corbin's hand when he took the Vanderbilt job at the ACC baseball tournament that year. And I said, by the way, I wasn't that far removed from national. And I said, by the way, it's a gold mine. If you can go there and find a way, he goes, I think Tim's quote to me was that day with Jack Leggett in the dugout, I think there's unbelievable potential in Nashville for baseball. And boy, was he right. I mean, just unbelievable. Yeah. And so, I think the stadium reconfiguration, is that the word they're using? I don't know. But all that's gone into it is amazing to me. To think that there was that lonely tunnel that got you out onto Jess Neely Drive and, walked across the street to McGugin, and they would dress in McGugin and walk across the street just through some barren tunnel and have this locker room in there that, wasn't much for a home team, let alone what the visiting team had, right? And to think they've had, and obviously Candace deserves a lot of credit being the AD about just putting all this together. And so I would say this, I would be really encouraged if I were a Vanderbilt fan. I mean, when I was there, the 3 years I was there, it was kind of like set your watch for drama. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of that anymore, Billy. And look, they have a lot of reasons to be that. I mean, the administration clearly of the university has gotten behind it. The alumni base is a younger alumni base probably than it was when I was there, right? And I think that's probably paid some dividends to them, and they're into it, and I appreciate that. And I think the sports that I'm familiar with basketball, I know Mark Byington a little bit. Obviously, I know Tim. Haven't talked to him in many, many years, but respect his work. Mark Byington in basketball, and certainly I wasn't there. Clark came after I left, but knowing a little bit about the culture and still keeping in touch with some people up there, I think there's really something to be proud of for sure.
All right, last thing for me here. You mentioned it, Enter Sandman, Lane Stadium. It's weird for Vanderbilt people because Vandy hasn't played there since 1986.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a while before Enter Sandman. It was 15 years before Enter Sandman.
So 4 or 5 straight years there, in the early 80s and then stopped for a while. So this is a unique trip. Vanderbilt has played in tough environments, whether it's South Carolina, Florida. I mean, you're in the SEC, but this is a different level of you've got everything around the intro. For Vanderbilt fans going up there, what is that like? Because I know you've experienced, and what should they know about Blacksburg and maybe places to eat if they're heading up there?
Well, Blacksburg's great. It's true college town in the mountains. That's number one. And it's not that bad a drive. Is it? It's less than. Is it about 6? I guess maybe from Nashville.
I think it's almost 7.
Almost 7. Yeah, it's 3 to Knoxville still. Is that right? And then Knoxville to Blacksburg is about 2.5, 2:45, I guess.
You're right. It's about 6, closer to 6 hours.
Yeah, I live northwest of Atlanta now. I'm 35 miles out of the city going toward Chattanooga. I live in Cartersville, Georgia. And so, I've driven to Blacksburg to do a game and come back after the game, because sometimes that's easier than flying. But, yeah, it's a great city. My first job, actually, ironically, to this storyline this week is my first job was at Radford University, which is kind of at one point was the all-girls sister school to Virginia Tech. And I went there after graduating from college for 3 years to do basketball there. And it's a great part of the country. They love the Hokies now. I mean, it's an area they have, and Frank Beamer and his family and the success he had, they deserve all the credit. He and Dave Rain, who was later the AD at Georgia Tech, Billy, they saved football there. They really did. Wow. And so it's a major event, even when they're not great, like right now where they're kind of, scuffling along. There'll still be a really good crowd there. The scene is good. Blacksburg itself is a wonderful community. It's hard to get rooms there now. So you might stay in Christiansburg, Pulaski, someplace like that. Maybe I think the team is staying in Roanoke. which is about 40 minutes away, but it's not bad. And so I think people will really enjoy the experience. It is very different, though, landscape-wise. It's beautiful. Now, it's a shame you're not playing third week in October because the leaves fully change up there, and it's a gorgeous
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's a great drive up 81. But it's a terrific environment. Enter Sandman started in 2000. Ironically, the night Lee Corso's car was struck by lightning is the first night it happened. It was Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech to start the year in what we now know as week 0. The game was never played. Corso's car was struck by lightning from a massive thunderstorm. I mean, a massive thunderstorm where we were in the old press box at the time, and it rained so hard you couldn't see the other side of the stadium. That's how hard it rained. And it rained like that for an hour, and the field was unplayable. When it finished raining and they got down on the field, I remember an official telling me that he stepped into the field in the middle of the end zone and then out around one of the hash marks, and the water had accumulated so much that his shoe went into the ground and the mud covered the shoe. And he almost couldn't get his shoe out of the mud. That's how bad the field was chopped up. But nonetheless, yeah, it's a great environment, and they do a terrific job. And the irony of this is the first time that Virginia Tech has played there. Metallica played live there on their world tour last summer in May.
Yep.
And so what kind of elements do they produce from that concert? If you're a Vanderbilt fan and you love Metallica, you can go down a rabbit hole on YouTube with Enter Sandman live at Lane Stadium. That's all you have to Google, and you see all these different versions from fans holding up cameras to everything else. But when they come out on the field, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah. For me, it's one of those top 3 things you see in college football.
Well, Clark said they've listened to it over 100 times this week. So I'm sure they'll be used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Adazio, the old BC coach, is doing the games with me. So I'm glad I'm up upstairs with you and not having to stand on the sideline and watch that this year. So, yeah, be fun for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it, Wes. We'll be watching, and obviously you can watch at 6:30 on the ACC network, and really good stuff. So, Wes, really appreciate it, and good luck on the call.
Thanks, Billy.